Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to wrap up what I read for the Queer Lit Read-a-thon. The first book I completed for the event was something I had started beforehand, but I'm counting it because I did finish it during the week of the event, and that was Goddess of the Hunt by Shelby Eileen. This is an amazing, own voices, queer poetry collection that explores themes of aromanticism and asexuality through the lens of the Greek goddess Artemis. She has a twin brother, Apollo, who is the god of the sun, while she is the goddess of the moon, the hunt, wild things, virginity, childbirth, and she herself is known as the Virgin Goddess. This poetry collection is told through her point of view as she tries to protect those in need of protection and as she resists these forces that say she needs to find love and experience sex when she's already fulfilled in her divine work. This was a really powerful, immersive poetry collection that illustrates a character who is strong and sure and resilient and complete. Artemis is all about protecting people from things they don't want, hurts they can't handle, horrible things they don't deserve. So it's interesting to see her striving to create that safety for other folks while on some levels struggling to secure that for herself. At the same time, she never wavers for a moment. She knows what she wants and what she doesn't want, what she cares about, what she doesn't care about, and she won't let anyone take that away. As goddess of the forest and wild things, this collection is very grounded in natural imagery and the evocative connections that come from that, which gave so much gravity to each and every piece. I think the poet was very much inspired by the literary tradition of the Song of Achilles, and it shows, which coming from me is a huge compliment. I was truly transported by these poems and I was blown away by this collection in its entirety, so I gave this one 4.5 stars. Coincidentally, the next book I finished was actually my reread/re-listen of the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, read by Fraser Douglas. In case you don't know, this is a reimagining of the Iliad told from the point of view of Patroclus, Achilles' lover and most precious of companions. It's about how the two met as children when Patroclus was exiled from his kingdom, how they grew to love each other, and how they suffered through the Trojan War, which was an event that would both solidify Achilles' legacy as a hero while also being his downfall as foretold by fate. This is definitely tragic, it's brutal, it comes with triggers for descriptions of gore and graphic violence, injury, and peripheral mentions of rape and assault. I've basically been discussing this book in some capacity for the last 5 years, so I don't have too much to add, but it is masterfully crafted and there's something about the writing that just settles deep into your bones. What still gets me about this story is the sheer amount of passion and emotion these characters experience at both ends of the story, but how those emotions are echoed in ways that are fundamentally different. The best example I can think of this is how Achilles talks about eating something raw twice in this book, but they're two completely different emotional expressions. The first is when Patroclus and Achilles are in the mountains and they've just crossed the threshold of their feelings for each other, and Achilles says, "I feel like I could eat the world raw," which is an expression of wonder and happiness. The second time is when Achilles is confronting Hector, who's bargaining for his life, and Achilles says, "There are no bargains between lions and men. I will kill you and I will eat you raw," which clearly comes from a place of hatred and anguish. That puts a fine point on how this story explores how relationships evolve over time and how the world changes as it strips away your innocence. That's what makes this story so tragic, the fact that you see these characters in their bright-eyed innocence and then you see the world destroy that innocence while Patroclus tries to salvage it at every chance. I literally cannot talk about this anymore. I gave this book again and always 5 stars. After that, I read The Mighty Heart of Sonny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a queer middle grade story about Sonny St. James, who's recently had a heart transplant and now she's ready to start doing all these new exciting things. She wants to swim in the ocean and meet a new best friend and kiss a boy for the first time, but after she meets her new best friend Quinn, she's afraid that she might not want to kiss a boy in the first place. Sonny is also reconnecting with her absentee mother, which is also complicating her summer plans. I would say this story comes with triggers for homophobic classmates, brief peripheral mentions of alcoholism, descriptions of physical illness and discomfort as it pertains to heart complications, and descriptions of a panic attack. On the lighter side, it's also important to note that Quinn is actually Puerto Rican, which is amazing because it's always nice to read about young queer Latinx folks. Once again, Ashley Herring Blake has struck the perfect balance between heartfelt emotional experiences with pain and loss and the joy and empowerment that comes from self-acceptance. It's so genuine and authentic and tenderly quiet that I think it'll strike a chord not only for younger audiences, but for audiences of all ages. There's so much happening in this book. There's self-doubt, there's Sonny recklessly pushing herself past her limits, reconciling her biological mother with the only parental figure she's ever known, falling in love, discarding toxic friendships. It's a lot, but it doesn't ever feel like a lot. Something that stood out to me was the way Sonny avoids her feelings. Every time she thinks she might be attracted to Quinn, she gets scared and deflects that energy into talking about kissing boys because boys are a safe topic. She's had experiences in the past where she told her ex-best friend that sometimes she thinks about kissing girls, and that led to her ex-best friend and some other classmates thinking of Sonny as unnatural and weird or freakish. It's not a good feeling, and she doesn't want to be rejected again, which is why she diverts all her gay panic into something else. I think everything changes for Sonny on every level when she realizes that everyone is imperfect, everyone has their secrets, and everyone is trying their best to navigate their truth, and there's something comforting about that. I love this story. I think it has great emotional payoff while exploring realistic issues that young queer folks face. It was every bit as great as Ivy Aberdeen, and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Caroline's Heart by Austin Chant. This is Own Voice's queer trans fantasy meets the Wild West meets Howl's Moving Castle in this story about Cecily, who's trying desperately to perfect a resurrection spell to bring back her soulmate. But just when she's getting close, she encounters a fatally injured cowboy who requires an essential piece of the resurrection spell if he is to survive. As I said, this story has major Howl's Moving Castle vibes. It's even dedicated to Diana Wynne Jones herself. And I was pleasantly surprised by that because I went in expecting this dark, creepy story about witchcraft and resurrecting the dead when it was actually like the quietest, softest, most domestic story in existence. It's about Cecily and her magical workshop that transports her to all these different places where she helps folks who are ill and disabled, and Roy, who is this pure-hearted cowboy who wants to help Cecily in any way he can, whether it's cooking or gardening or just giving her a moment to relax. And the best part is that both of these characters are trans. That's something you never really see, and it was beautiful to have these two characters who fundamentally understand and accept each other, who desire each other, and who inherently recognize that the other person is worthy of their love and respect. The magic in this story is also phenomenal. It just exists. There's no hard and fast rules about how it works. It's driven by emotion and intention and exists to support these characters. And the resurrection spell was a really powerful metaphor because it becomes unstable and dangerous the second Cecily removes that essential piece. And that made me think about how queer folks and trans folks especially can have a tendency to cling onto past versions of ourselves as a safety crutch. The spell was not only preserving Caroline, but the idea of who Cecily was when she was with Caroline, and we all have to reach a point where we realize I can no longer be that version of myself. And that concept of letting the past go holds so much weight, especially for queer folks. I was once again blown away by Austin Chant's work, and I gave this story 5 stars. Lastly, I had originally planned to read Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy, but not only did my library hold never come through, but I read a sample of the story and I wasn't really getting into it. So luckily I had another queer sci-fi epic I could call up from the bench, and that's how I listened to The Disasters by M.K. England, read by James Foey. This is a badass queer sci-fi epic about bi-disaster and hotshot pilot Nax, who's ready to attend the prestigious Ellis Station Academy and fulfill his dreams. But as soon as he gets there, he is unceremoniously kicked out. As he's boarding the spaceship to go home, there is a terrorist attack on the station itself, and now he and the other Academy washouts are the perfect scapegoats and the only surviving witnesses. To give you an idea of the cast, we have a bi-protagonist who is of Iranian descent, I believe, a queer black British love interest, a genius girl with anxiety and panic attacks, a Kazakhstani trans badass, and a hijabi Muslim hacker, so all of that is great. This is a rip-roaring, quirky, hilarious adventure from start to finish. It is pure action and high stakes on every single page. I think there's a great balance between crazy action-packed stunts and emotional exploration for each of the characters in this book. All of them, for whatever reason, have been rejected from this space station, which obviously makes them feel ashamed and less in many ways, and they're slowly coming to not only share that with the rest of the team, but to accept that and embrace that. There's some really great team building and team dynamics here because these folks are united by a common cause, and they're all running from their own secrets. But at the same time, they all have their roles to play, and they have to trust in their crewmates to play their part. And that trust is everything, especially for Nax, who doesn't really trust himself as a pilot after things that have happened in the past. But no one can fly the way he does off of hunches and instinct and pure talent, so because his crewmates trust him, he has to trust himself. This book has amazing banter and quips, amazing action sequences, the best descriptions of piloting that gave me all the Star Wars, Star Trek, Voltron vibes, amazing team dynamics, all of that checks out. The only thing was that the ending felt a little anticlimactic since you're building towards this huge confrontation, and then it just sort of tapers off, even though I did like the ending itself. And the other thing was that like the terrorist group in question was basically a group opposed to colonization and terraforming foreign planets, and it just felt a little weird to be opposing that, but I guess that's how it goes. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. So those are all the books I read for the Queer Lit Read-a-thon. I have read so many more queer books since, and I will continue to read exclusively Queer Lit for the next couple of weeks. If you took part in the Queer Lit Read-a-thon yourself, or if you just have a favorite new to you queer book that you've discovered in the month of June, I would love to hear from you in the comments. But that's everything I had for this read-a-thon wrap-up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the flip side of the page.